Interesting. I wonder how has that been like received by people broadly?
I don't know.
How's
I
one been
haven't
received
talked.
by who?
Uh, Stranger Things. Have you seen the new season?
No. How
That's pretty good.
do you think FDI is like driving up housing costs significantly?
To some extent, yes, yeah.
Hold on. When I ask
So
you, is it driving up costs significantly? You say to some extent. It sounds like then the answer is no. It's probably having some effect, but not like.
well, I mean, so every 1% increase in dollars coming in is leading to like 20 or 0.25 to like 0.3%, housing price increase. So it is having an impact in its material,
How do you
but
know
it's
that
not
the
as
how do you
much.
know that the increase in the cost of housing isn't what drives the FDI though? So like for instance, we could imagine there'd be a
So
market that wouldn't
it's
be lucrative to invest in, but as the markets increase, then the FDI increases as well, no?
well, I mean, yeah, it can, but the more important causal driving factor is buying housing is a way for foreign nationals to get money out of their country,
Mm-hmm.
and the same thing with buying cars. So that's why you see basically most Chinese students of wealth, they'll get the most expensive car that they can, and then they'll sell it when they leave school for like a pretty significant like drop off because they can get the money outside of the country. And the same thing with buying housing, right? There's large capital controls on a lot of these countries, but hey, you need to live abroad or your family
But
needs to live
wait,
abroad.
isn't
You can buy
that
a
isn't that
house.
always going to be like a natural consequence of running massive trade deficits? That currency is always going to come back in the form of like FDI if that's going to.
Uh, Not necessarily, but
So like
I
for
mean,
instance,
it's one of them. But
let's say
it's
it was the case that there was like no trade deficit between Canada and China. Wouldn't that make it really hard for that money to like be invested in Chinese real estate?
well, it's
Or
coming
I'm sorry, not
into
Chinese,
Canadian real estate.
Canadian real estate. I'm sorry, sorry.
No, well, no, because the impetus there is you're trying to get money outside of the control of China. So regardless of the trade deficit, they want their money not in China, and the mechanisms to do that are cars and housing. Or the most effective ways are cars and housing.
Why don't we see way more FDI in the form of housing than for Canada?
We, what do you mean? There's a
Like I think right
lot.
now it's like of all the new property built, I think I saw the highest number I saw was 9 point something percent is coming like from foreign investment. Why wouldn't that be like one? Why wouldn't everybody just be dumping their money there?
Because you have to live there and you can only buy one house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's only so many Chinese nationals living there, and there's only so many houses they're allowed to buy. So like they can't buy 50 houses.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, it's a contributory factor.
It's
It's not
contributed, but
the
I think if
most
you
one.
were to,
Yeah.
it feels like if you were to axe all of the foreign investment, it doesn't feel like it's going to make that big of like how prices aren't dropping. They might just
Well,
increase slightly
yeah,
slower.
yeah, they'll increase less. Like
Uh-huh.
depending on the market, probably somewhere between 5 and 30% of the increase will be lost.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, the biggest issue is basically zoning issues and permitting is generally what it tends to be. The people, the NIMBYs who have single family housing who don't want to develop, or the people who are shooting down the new housing developments that are high density or whatever.
Is there any solution for that in the Western world, or
Yeah, well, I mean, the short answer is well, the land value tax is actually like a pretty effective way to get rid of it. Places like Houston, I think, are interesting examples of just total deregulation being an absolute disaster.
I feel like LVT is impossible to pass in the United States,
Oh
though,
yeah,
right?
it
Yeah.
absolutely is.
So
Yeah,
I don't ever,
yeah. I mean, tax reform is never coming through. It's the easiest way to collect is on income and on sale of
sales.
capital assets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even though it's not really an effective way to
How do
trim
you
the
even begin to
economy.
do valuations of land, though, if you wanted to do a land value tax? It feels like,
Well, you would probably have to do auctions. You would like auction like the rights to live there and with whatever is on there for X amount of time.
mm-hmm. Would that apply
You
to
can do
everything,
some.
including like residential shit, or was that only
Yeah,
for
yeah,
commercial? Yeah.
it would. And then there's also ways that you can kind of estimate it based on other nearby properties. So, for instance, if you have a neighborhood, right, you can see where the new construction in the neighborhood is, what value they're putting into it, and the value that the homes are selling. And then you can look at vacant lots in nearby areas, and then you can
It's kind of how
take a
they do
look at
appraisals for
economic
mortgages and
activity.
shit, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, and so you can estimate out what is the empty lot value of properties. And so then you can use that, but that's again just like an estimation, and then you're using reliant on a lot of pretty sophisticated econometrics, which are probably not going to be people aren't going to be very happy with how they go, and there's not really a great way to enforce it, like through the courts or whatever. It's going to be challenged, and no one's going to really understand.
Because different people are going to fight for different formulas
Yeah,
to
basically.
value things, right? Of course, because the incentive is always going to be for lower. It's kind of like if you were to do a wealth tax, people are going to push to evaluate or to value their stuff as low as possible, right?
Sure. Yeah, and then again, because it's like formulaic, well, it's going to be argument of what actually goes in, and then there's always going to be residuals that people are going to say, oh, well, it's really not, that the residuals are too high or whatever. It doesn't actually reflect my conditions.
What what can the United States do right now to combat inflation besides the Fed raising rates?
So the first thing, I guess, is Biden. Oh, what the fuck? There's a tree ant that. All right. So the first thing that we can do is literally we need to expand our drilling. We need to get rid of all the crap. We need to expand shale. We need to expand natural gas. We need to extend the leases in the Gulf of Mexico that Biden just canceled. We needed to tighten the money supply earlier.
How do you? Well, we can't do anything earlier, so that's passed. When you say we need to expand our shale and shit, do we like nationalize gas companies to do this, or how do you do this?
No, we need to stop the freezes at the Bureau of Land Management, and there's another one that aren't giving permits out. Right now, it takes about 2 months to get a shale.
Yeah, I've heard of this, but I thought
It's
even if you gave them all the permits in the world, though, would they really start drilling again? I thought their goal right now was to just collect on what they have and then kind of like phase out over time. That like
yeah. Well, because the problem is there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to continue operations, right? And they won't get any guarantees that they'll be allowed to continue leasing this for a time to make it worthwhile. And then because there is the potential squeeze, which is what OPEC did last time that we had shale production, they don't want to get pushed out, and they don't want, because it's really expensive. So when you open up a well, there is a fixed cost at the beginning that's relatively expensive.
Basically, my understanding is
oil,
when it comes to like shale stuff, it only works if gas is so much. But if as soon as America starts to bring that online, if OPEC starts to supply a fuck ton, then you're basically running at an indefinite loss until they run out of oil, which isn't.
Yeah, exactly, because OPEC's been operating as a cartel for a large number of years, and now it's OPEC plus with Russia and some of the other places.
So the U.S. can't guarantee anything to like manufacture it or whatever you would call it, to people at oil,
sure,
right?
Yeah, we can have retaliatory tariffs on foreign oil if they start playing their fuck games again.
Yeah, but how do you even begin to? I don't think we can do that. The United States placing tariffs on all of OPEC? That sounds like it would be like a worldwide economic like shit show.
I mean, it basically already is right now with energy prices how they are.
Well, but it would be more because then there'd be like the European Union wouldn't join us on those tariffs. No fucking way, right?
Well, if we were exporting oil to them, then they might.
Could we subsume the oil production and then have enough to take care of all of Europe that's not getting OPEC or Russia?
Depends on the price of oil. We have a lot of oil between the U.S. and Canada.
Mm-hmm. Well, Canada can't even get to their shit right now, though, right? They have their own domestic problems about that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, you would need large international cooperation in order for this to kind of go through, which is almost a pipe dream at this point because the entire world's so isolated.
Do we have to ship all of our oil to the European Union via boats, or do we have pipelines that go across the Atlantic
There's
Ocean?
no pipelines that go across the ocean.
Is that possible, or just impossible, or just no political will?
The engineering challenge there would be extreme, to put it. Yeah, it's basically impossible. You can't do it. It's just so extremely expensive, and it's just not worthwhile. Oil's relatively easy to ship on boats because all you need to do is just build a giant boat. Whereas for LNG, you need to be able to keep it compressed and cold so it doesn't explode. And so you don't really need a lot of sophisticated stuff. All you need is a piece of metal that floats and you can fill it with oil and ship it. But yeah, I think, again, the bigger issue is Germany shutting down the nuclear plants really hurt stuff. That's probably the weakest point in Europe.
Oh yeah,
and that's
shit.
Why
Germany is like,
most.
aren't they bringing back online some like fucking coal-fired plants? Or am I making that up?
Yeah, the brown lignite, like literally the worst stuff in the world.
The most polluting shit. Yeah.
Yeah, things are really fucked over there.
Is the nuclear power thing like a legitimate like environmental and everything concern, or is it literally just political will around the scary word nuclear?
It's political will. I mean, so there's a little bit of stuff that's scary about it, right? So you do make a lot of highly concentrated radioactive waste, and we don't have any way of getting rid of it right now. We have storage for a couple hundred years worth of it. And then the question is, okay, well, what do we do? Do we leave it in the ground for 10,000 years and just like mark it and then tell people never to do it? Do we like launch it into the sun? Well, what if, a terrorist shoots that down? Then you're basically going to destroy the entire eastern seaboard or wherever you launch it. So there's some like esoteric questions out there, but it's not really relevant to whether or not we can use it for baseline energy. So it's my thoughts on it. The problem is that the other problem with nuclear fuel is that right now most of it is coming from reprocessed nuclear weapons, right? So we've been disarming here in America and here in the USSR. And so a lot of the cheap fuel is basically like, okay, well, we have these nuclear weapons we're not using. We can turn that into nuclear fuel. We can burn that pretty cheap. And we need to get actual production from uranium back online. And we don't have that real capacity right now.
Gotcha.
Oh, by the way, Rage Pope, everybody's mad at your keyboard.
Oh, let me see if I can change that real quick. I should be able to just...
Who cares?
Sort it out.
They thought it was me, but I wasn't even at the fucking computer.
Okay, what about now? You shouldn't be able to hear it, I don't think.
Not yet.
Okay, yeah, there we go. Sorry. I just needed to enable filtering on Discord.
Maybe I'll start using my loud keyboard just to make chat upset.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, I could just move my mic next to my keyboard.
I don't know if you talked about this yet, but are you going to talk about the What is a Woman documentary? Also, I love you.
Okay, don't donate at all today, guys. Shit is fucked. I don't know why. If you donate, you're probably getting scammed. Somebody did a $10 super chat saying, a nuclear power, small modular reactors of the future, 50 to 1,000 megawatts, new scale
power. The Jews are still very much hated by the alt-right.
As a matter of fact,
I've never seen this much open anti-Semitism on social media.
So the big reason why people are trying to do that is because right now it takes like basically 10 years to get like approved for your reactor design. So it's very expensive.
I don't know if you talked about this yet, but are you going to talk about the What is a Woman documentary?
I've got blanket approval for this 500 megawatt reactor. Now I can make 500 of them and then I can just drop them wherever I want around the country. But they're not as efficient as the larger plant designs. And then there's, again, just going to be the general pushback against them. But the idea or the hope is that it's going to dramatically reduce the time before you start getting, dollar payback. And so then the cost comes significantly down. And so you can build these reactors wherever you want. From technical limitations and from just the general ill will for people for nuclear reactors, I don't think they're going to want a lot of them all over the place, but I could be wrong. I mean, basically, look at America since 3 Mile Island. No one's going to want a reactor in their neighborhood. And it's almost easier politically to say, like, okay, well, out in the woods, we're going to put like a 5 gigawatt plant rather than, we're just going to put like one of these in the harbor in New York, right? But yeah, I mean, ideally they'd be like a lot better because you could just put them down in the middle of the city. So instead of needing like a coal peaker or an oil peaker in the middle of these cities, you can just drop a nuclear power plant, which isn't going to really put out that much pollution.
If I die doing what I'm doing, don't come to DGG tomorrow.
Whoa. Shouldn't we be going like together?
You're fucking dying over and over and don't have a coffin.
What about Rage Pope?
I'm coming now.
Yeah, he's on his way.
I dropped off all this down in the grinder.
He was getting the grinder done. What were you doing?
Grinding on your mom.
Steven.
Got him.
Oh, fuck.
All right, so here's a question for you, Destiny. We're above 4.5% inflation right now, like 8-ish. We've never had a soft landing after that. So what do you think the economy is going to look like if we have to enter another Volcker rule era? Like, do we have any tools available, or are we just going to be in another decade of misery?
I'm about to die again. There's no way to get back to base if you don't have a coffin, huh? You're just fucked forever.
If you gotta be sneaky.
You gotta run through the woods.
Gotta be sneaky. Oh, that was you. Okay.
Yep. Okay. I think the most concerning thing right now is that there's so much uncertainty with people, and there's a lot of blame on like the systems that basically run everything, right? So the Fed, the government, everybody on each side just hates it, and so there's no trust in any of the policies that are being enacted. And I think that's really going to drive a lot of.
Okay, sorry. So ask me the question again.
Okay, so if you take a look at who's generally responsible for getting us out of recessions, right? We have the Federal Reserve and we have Congress, but there is record distrust on both sides of basically everything, right?
Federal Reserve can act independent of political pressure, so that doesn't matter, right? The Fed can do what the Fed does.
But if people don't believe in what the Fed's going to do, if that's actually
people don't need to believe in anything. People don't know anything about monetary policy, so why does that matter? Or are you talking about like political pressure for?
Well, so you do have to believe in it for it to have an impact, right? So that's just like basically Muthian expectations.
Wait,
so
why do you have to believe in the Federal Reserve for the Federal Reserve to have an impact?
Well, you have to believe in the Federal Reserve's ability to set inflation or to hit the inflation target, right? Because inflation is literally whatever the expected inflation is plus residuals. If you believe the Fed cannot enact appropriate monetary policy, then they can't set, then it's not going to be in residuals, the year-to-year stuff that's happening right now, and we'll get a higher constant rate of inflation because there's no belief that the Fed's policies are actually going to reset it down to zero. Or to 2%.
But if the Fed is adjusting interest rates and like the velocity of money decreases and people can't get loans or whatever, like naturally won't spending fall even if people don't believe in the Fed? Like isn't bringing spending down
sure, but it's significantly harder, right? The amount of monetary policy that you have to do is also proportional to the impact that the market is going to expect it to have. So if they're expecting your policies to have no impact, you're going to need significantly greater tightening or increase of rates in order for it to happen, and then that leads to further damage.
Sure, but it seems like the expectations here are going to be set on in the eyes of like more business savvy people and not just like normies in the political economy, right? Like it's going to be how like do businesses think it's going to continue to remain inflationary or not or something, no?
Yeah, but so a lot of our economy, like it or not, are small businesses, and these people are becoming more and more radicalized on average in terms of their policy setting, their hiring, their firing. It's more pervasive, right? I'd say the average person who's running these businesses is becoming more politicized and less likely to make decisions based on these facts and rather their political beliefs that are being fed to them from like basically the Russians or the Chinese, I guess. Sorry, I'm not explaining this very well, but imagine that you have your business owners, right? You expect them to be following whatever decisions that they need to do in order to keep their business afloat. But the business decisions that they're making are no longer flowing through Fed decision making, but instead it's flowing through
like what Trump tweets or something, or what their political radicals
the political ideology. Right. Yeah. So now instead of this monetary policy having as big of an impact, well, they're thinking this monetary policy isn't enough. Therefore, I'm going to make hiring decisions with wages, with
so essentially future expectation of inflation can essentially drive more inflation, basically, right? That
exactly.
Yeah. So because if people are acting irrationally with respect to whether they think inflation is coming or not, it'll become self-fulfilling because people will make decisions that will continue to drive inflation because they expect. Okay, sure. I mean, other than like cutting spending, I don't know. Like everybody's spending, I don't know what tools does the government have at its disposal.
I don't know, and that's like the scary thing is there's like not really much left, right? We've already thrown.
Well, hold on. When we say not much left, interest rates have been historically low for like a long fucking time.
Sure, but I mean, so yes, but we're having high inflation and we're going to have lower economic growth because of food and because of energy, right? Your rent costs are going up, your energy prices are going up, goods are more expensive to produce, you're going to buy less real goods. So you don't have those tools to create economic growth, and we don't have that much room on the fiscal side either to continue deficit spending.
Arguably, can't we influence a lot of this on the supply side? That like part of the issue is still related to like shipping things around the world or getting factories running around the world. Like, isn't there some wiggle room there for some sort of stimulative effect?
Sure, but you're with China's zero COVID policy, which is shutting down a lot of the goods, one, and two, a lot of the overseas governments are under the same constraints that we are, if not worse. So our major trading partners are having the same constraints that we are, so we can't rely on them to continue to be able to produce the same amounts of goods and services, or to be able to consume more from them and substitute out our local goods. The world's becoming less connected because of Russia and Ukraine, I guess.
Wait, say that last thing again?
So because of Russia and Ukraine, it's strained a lot of our relations with a lot of different nations, and it's jacked up energy prices across the board. Generally, if we're having problems with unfucking the supply chains more or less, we could go out to other partners around the world, and we could import more from Germany, from Europe, from China, from Vietnam. But because of what's going on in Russia, things are being strained with our relations with the EU. Things are being strained with our relations with China.
Are they, when you say strained, is that really true though? Are there like people in Europe, or I shouldn't even say that, is the European Union like less likely to do business with the United States because of Russia and Ukraine, or what do you?
So, I mean, the short answer is kind of, it's a mixed bag on the policy. So we are seeing less trade happening with them.
Well, but that's, I mean, for what reason though, right? Like, is it
energy.
really? Yeah, but I mean, is it like,
costs.
but it's not like political things. Like, I don't want to sell to the United States or something, right? We still have access to the market and everything we did before, no?
Sure, yeah. Oh, man.
The two things that I've read the most on, but obviously it feels like all of this has to be diagnosed retrospectively, or it's hard to know, like, when you're in the middle of something, why exactly things are happening. But it seems like there are still, like, supply hangups around the world. And it seems like there are a lot of dollars in the United States economy right now that are chasing fewer and fewer supplies, and that's like a huge driver of a lot of these issues. I've heard people mention that like Ukraine and the political economy and everything is influencing things to some extent as well, but that these are still like massive drivers that are probably accounting for most of the inflation. But again, people argue. But
I don't know if I'd say most of the inflation. So most of the initial inflation, maybe. So we had a huge glut of savings that's basically been burned through from people, and the COVID stimulus is mostly worn off.
Because like let's ignore, if we ignore inflation, right? Let's say we ignore inflation, our economy is still doing like pretty well, no? Like
yes.
Like labor force, or at least like unemployment is incredibly low, wages are rising.
Yeah, there's a large amount of jobs. There's a large amount of jobs. Yeah, wage growth. The only issue is basically imports are drastically down, and we are pretty reliant on that. And then just expectations of the future blowing up, right? We're starting to see pretty big layoffs. Jesus.
Yeah, I understand we're seeing in some areas we're seeing layoffs, but like even at that, like we're still like overemployed right now, right? I think it's 3.6%, I think is the last number I saw, so.
Yeah, it's very, very low. And I think it's going to continue to be like that. I think we're going to see substantial shifts in our economy, though, moving forward. I think we're just going to become more isolated, and that's going to be a little bit scary for people.
No shot. Well, you really think we're going to start like setting up like our own manufacturing in the U.S. or something? Or?
I think so. I think there's been a big push under Trump and Biden, and I think both sides of the left and the right, they're really pushing for manufacturing to be done at home to increase.
I know
tariffs.
there's that push for it. But I don't think people will bear the prices. Maybe, but like everybody always says that shit. But at the end of the day, people are shopping at Target and Walmart en masse. So I feel like it's hard to say that that's going to be like a sustained push. Who's eating all of our copper? Where the fuck is it going? Never mind.
No idea.
I took it out for a second and then I put it back.
I'm taking all of it now. So
that's
I'm
okay.
going to die with all of our shit.
Well, at least build something out of it.
Did the Trump tax cuts contribute to inflation? Somebody in chat.
Well, yeah, because we ran a massive deficit, and we continue to run a massive deficit. Like, we were spending more under the Trump years than we were at the height of the 2008 recession, with a very good economy.
Yeah, I feel like the time to cool off things probably would have been under Trump. Things started to run away hardcore at the beginning, but I don't know why the Fed didn't try to tighten anything then. Do you know why?
So
I feel like they mentioned that they were maybe going to do like a 25-point raise or whatever, and that people like were losing their minds over it, even though
So the problem was they had the taper tantrum. Basically, the Fed said, "Okay, we need to start tightening again," right? Which is all fine and dandy. And then they said the scary word symmetric. So basically, as fast as they were putting money on in the or money into the economy during the 2008 recession, they were just going to start pulling it out, which is ludicrously fast. The economy blew up right at the end of 2018, and then they said, "Oh shit, we didn't mean that. Sorry, guys," and it basically rebounded. If you go look at like the S&P 500, you can basically see where that is. And so what happened was they said, "Okay, well, we're going to give things like a year to stabilize, and then we're going to, start pushing rates again. And then now it's not going to be symmetric, right? We're not going to have the same problem. We're going to start tightening." And then COVID happened, and then nothing happened through our government. The Fed basically said we just need to invent new facilities to potentially do that, and so we lost all chance at, tightening our balance sheet because they did it too fast.
You don't think Trump's statements influenced the Fed, right? That they wouldn't have done it because of him throwing a temper tantrum, right?
I don't think so. The markets were the ones that blew up. Obviously, I assume it has to have some influence. No one's going to be able to say, when I have the president of the United States screaming at me on Twitter, that it doesn't at least make me double check all my work.
Sure, but I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't Bernanke. It was it Powell under Trump?
Yeah, it was Powell. Yeah.
Would presidents? Has it happened historically where a president will just kick out whoever the chair is and just put a new one if they don't like? Okay, yeah, because that would be pretty.
No, absolutely not. That would be wild beyond anything that we've ever seen before.
This place is looted right now, so let's go up and left.
Simon Says.
We can loop back around.
Okay, babe. I like how Destiny has no idea about the Fed, but he still has these ridiculous opinions that Donald Trump was influencing them. Bob, awesome. Tell me what I just said that I was wrong about, or you're permabanned from my YouTube chat. Good luck. You've got 20 seconds to type something, you fucking retard.